Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we're talking about how it's looking like some big Nintendo news may be about to happen. And when I say some big Nintendo news, I mean potentially a lot. Because, yes, there are many speculating, theorizing, and there are even some people maybe leaking that the Nintendo Switch 2 will have its proper reveal in this month of January. And so we're going to be speaking more on that, trying to pinpoint when exactly this reveal may happen. But this conversation is going to go beyond that, because there's also talk of us getting Xenoblade Chronicles X news, and news on Pokemon Legends ZA. How do these games tie into the Switch 2 reveal, if at all? But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and if you're unsure, watch through this video and then decide. So first, let's go over some interesting updates that are impacting the overall conversation here. Pokemon's official Twitter page pinned the Pokemon Legends ZA trailer again. It is now the main thing they want you to see. It wasn't like this before, and this is leading people to speculate that Pokemon Legends ZA news may finally be about to drop. Now, what's interesting about this is that, well, we're already in 2025, the supposed launch year for Legends ZA. It's the next big thing we know that's coming from Pokemon. And so you could argue that's reason enough to pin the Legends ZA trailer. And Pokemon Day is in February, where we usually see some sort of Pokemon presentation that announces their content for the upcoming year and perhaps sometimes a bit beyond. That is almost certainly where we are going to get news on Pokemon Legends ZA, but some people think that because they're now pinning this tweet, that we might get some Legends ZA information before the Pokemon Presents in February. But what I find so odd about that is that if they're going to have the Presents in February, why would you wait the entire year and only start talking about the game in January just to a few weeks later still talk about the game anyways? It just seems a bit odd. However, I can think of a bit of a scenario where it might make a bit more sense, and this could have to do with the Nintendo Switch 2. We might actually see some Legends ZA footage in this month of January within the Switch 2 reveal. Now I know we've already gotten the Terra leak, where there is a literal leak confirmed, there's no debate here, of a whole bunch of information having come out from Pokemon Company and Game Freak, and we learned about a whole bunch of internal plans, and this included how there is no current Switch 2 version being worked on for Legends ZA. Now, when I say current, I mean as of the time when that information was put in before it was leaked. So it's possible, maybe, they have changed gears and have started working on a Switch 2 version for Legends ZA. But also, I think it should be noted that it doesn't necessarily have to be a dedicated cross-generation version like there might be two separate releases here. It might just be still Legends ZA, but there could perhaps be an enhancement patch. It has been speculated and rumored that there are going to be some Switch 1 games that will have enhancements accessed via some sort of downloadable patch on Switch 2. They will be Switch 1 games that you can play on your Switch 2 thanks to backwards compatibility, but some select games, Nintendo may offer a little bit of an enhancement. And there's been some theorizing that we might see a little bit of this showcased in the Switch 2 reveal trailer. So the Switch 2 reveal trailer may not just be about showing off the hardware and some new games coming to the console, but also how this console can improve Switch 1 games, which might be a pretty nice important feature. And so Legends ZA might be a prime candidate to show enhanced on Switch 2. Now, the one problem with this is that we haven't seen the version for Switch 1 yet. But regardless or not of whether there's a patch or not for Legends ZA, I think there's a lot of value in having a big new Pokemon game as a part of your next generation reveal trailer. Just to see Pokemon on a next generation console to start things off, even if it's simply through backwards compatibility, especially when no footage has been shown yet. If people see Pokemon in that Switch 2 reveal trailer, it's certainly going to stir even more conversation and intrigue. So obviously, I think there's a decent chance that we could still see Legend of ZA this month of January if the Switch 2 reveal is also happening in this month of January. But in regards to this pinned tweet, it might be a bit of a nothing burger. And actually, Pioro, this is Pioro's account now. Remember, they don't use their name anymore because they've privated it and all that. But they were asked a few things, including from Jake here, Kirby4604, do you know why Pokemon pinned this to their profile and changed their banner? And Pioro responds, it had been pinned since last year and they changed it back because the Rayquaza raid ended. And so from that, you can probably take away that Pioro is suggesting that there isn't really much to extrapolate from them pinning this trailer anymore. However, since we're on the note of Pioro, Pioro has indicated some big Nintendo news to happen pretty soon. And by the way, if you're unfamiliar with who Pioro is one of the more known credible leakers. They usually get things right. They may not have as much access to info as they once did, but when they do speak on things, it usually amounts to something. And so here, VeggieWiz asked, so we are getting something this week? And Pioro responds, Xenoblade. Perhaps they mean Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. It is coming out this March. We do need more news. It makes a lot of sense. So I think, yeah, we're probably getting Xenoblade Chronicles X news this week. However, some people really want the Switch 2 reveal to happen this week, no matter what. And so we're seeing some people ask certain questions or be skeptical of Xenoblade news this week, right? Like in the case here of the split team. They say, no, you are messing, aren't you? If it might be Switch 2 this, if it might be something else, do this. And Pioro responds, last time, due to my vagueness, people expected the Switch 2 announcement, but it turned out to be Xenoblade. I don't want to mislead y'all again. And so, I really appreciate what Pioro is saying here. They are acknowledging the power they have. And so sometimes, when they are very vague, we can interpret certain things and get extremely excited. And so they're being very clear here that this has to do with Xenoblade. They aren't leaving it up for debate. And so what's interesting about this is that we have another apparent insider here on Family Boards. If you guys remember Ninspider, they're someone who only posts about Switch 2 on Family Boards every once in a while, and when they do, it's about something that we've learned about soon after from other sites or has been leaked. So Ninspider, in hindsight, is maybe the best Switch 2 specific leaker. But they said this a while back. I'm translating it here because it's in Japanese, apparently. They had said, also, there is some unconfirmed information that time, maybe 1 week after the New Year in Japan. However, it is possible this is just new information about Xenoblade Chronicles X. There will probably be no new information in December. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. So when they say that time, they're referring to the Switch 2, and they are talking about how the Switch 2 reveal could be happening in early January, but it might be Xenoblade Chronicles X instead. And so, here we are in this early part of January. Pioro is teasing Xenoblade Chronicles news. It makes sense to get Xenoblade Chronicles news. Ninspider suggested that Xenoblade Chronicles news might happen during this period of time. I think we're getting Xenoblade Chronicles X news this week, and it makes a lot of sense because we still need to learn about some key elements of the game before it comes out in March. And actually, we have another insider that has spoken on this situation. Samus Hunter. I know, a lot of people don't like to trust Samus Hunter because of their past. However, in the year of 2024, they teased 3 different major Nintendo announcements. Xenoblade, MEO, and the Donkey Kong Nintendo World Direct. So I think they're worth paying attention to. Here Samus Hunter says, Pioro teased an upcoming Xenoblade Chronicles X news for this week. While I haven't received any information on the content or specific release timing for the trailer, it was planned for an early January release, and that does fit this week. So, I think it should be pointed out that the way Samus Hunter writes, it's clear that English is not their first language. So when they say things like an early January release, they're not talking about Xenoblade Chronicles X coming out in January. When you look at the context, they are talking about a release of information. And actually going back to Christmas on 2024, they had said, if everything goes as planned months ago, yes, I will continue to keep you updated on its status. The other Xenoblade Chronicles X overview trailer and info on the new additions and improvements. I think going back here, they're talking about it happening in January. So it seems like what we could be looking at here is a Xenoblade Chronicles X overview trailer, if what Samus Center is suggesting. And I would actually find that to be extremely interesting, because that would mean the overview trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles X would be coming out about 2 months early, which is definitely out of the ordinary. That would be even further in advance than the Donkey Kong Country Returns overview trailer. It's coming out a little bit later this month, but the overview trailer came out just a few weeks ago. It hasn't even been a month yet, but basically once Donkey Kong comes out, it will have been out for about a month. And so with Xenoblade X coming out in late March, to see an overview trailer on this game in the first half of January, that's more than a 2-month period here. I would find that to be an odd situation. But Samus Hunter says something else here. So I would say that the reveal plans for Switch 2 have not changed, despite some internal concerns following the leaks. Don't expect bigger things right now for this week. But I gotta say, if we are going to get a Xenoblade Chronicles X overview trailer this week, then that's pretty far in advance, and it almost makes me think that Nintendo might be trying to wrap things up here with the games they have currently announced for Switch. That way they can start kicking things into full gear when it comes to the Switch 2 marketing. And look, I know some people want to be skeptical on when the Switch 2 is going to happen. Some people want to think it's happening at the end of the year. Some people think it's coming out in 2026. But we have gotten so many leaks on the console. Just yesterday, we talked about how we saw the actual Joy-Con for the console, and there is a serial number that we were able to check out and see that it is actually in Nintendo's database. So it's hard to believe that the Switch 2 finalized version of the Joy-Con has not been leaked. It probably has been. Never mind all the shipping manifests, never mind all the reports, all the rumors coming from credible insiders, all the accessory leaks. There is so much smoke, it's impossible to breathe. So I do think the Switch 2 is coming out not too far off from now. Some people want to believe that the Switch 2 is coming out this March. I do not believe that. Xenoblade Chronicles X is coming out in March. I really doubt Nintendo would have such a quick turnaround, revealing the console in January, coming out 2 months later. That sounds like a total catastrophe. And again, Xenoblade Chronicles X is coming out in March. Why would they do that? I really just don't see how that makes any sense. But some people want to believe this because there's another user out there, Next Handheld, who has been behind some of these Switch 2 leaks. And on their Reddit AMA on the Switch 2, they had indicated that a third-party source had told them that the release might be in March, but a reveal would be in January. But they said that was an old third-party source. And so, if things have been subject to change, then that March release date may also be subject to change, and I think it's more likely it's not coming out that soon. So the overall point I'm making here is that yes, with Next Handheld, thanks to the recent Joy-Con leak from yesterday, they now seem even more credible than before, and so we have to take a closer look at the different things they said, which one of them includes the March release date. That part doesn't make sense, but just because they said one thing that's probably wrong, that doesn't mean everything else has to be wrong. As they said, they heard it from one third-party source a while back. And when we're talking about things that have been confirmed, they're all subject to change. Not everything is going to materialize. So when it comes to talking about different leakers or rumors, what have you, even if some of the information is true, that doesn't mean all the information is true, and vice versa. Now, does that mean that I don't think the Switch 2 reveal is happening in January because I don't think it's coming out in March? No, I actually still think the Switch 2 reveal is happening in January, but the system is more likely coming out in May or June, which would be a more similar period of time between reveal and release as the Switch 1, which makes a lot more sense to me, and would be a few months removed from Xenoblade Chronicles X, giving that game its opportunity to succeed in the month of March. And so with all of this in mind, what might this suggest about when we see a Switch 2 reveal? Well, with Xenoblade Chronicles X news expected this week, it's probably easy to write off this week for the reveal. It's possible they could do it a couple days later, but I'm leaning in the direction of it's not this week. Especially because there's no murmurings of it happening specifically this week, so I would say we're safe expecting it a little bit after this week. I think in March is just too far off considering all the leaks and when we're expecting the console to come out, presumably May or June. And I also think February is unlikely at this point because we are probably going to get a Pokemon Presents at the end of the month. And it is also expected that we're going to have to get some kind of Nintendo Direct about Switch 1. It may not be a full-on Nintendo Direct, but there are still some Nintendo Switch 1 games that are expected to be announced relatively soon. And even if there isn't any Nintendo stuff to be shown off in a Direct, there's still likely going to be at least a partner showcase. And so with these two big presentations in mind, they probably want to avoid February, especially when you consider the opportunity to have a Switch 2 commercial at the Super Bowl, which happens on February 9th, meaning you would need a reveal to happen beforehand, and it probably wouldn't be just a couple days beforehand like that week. You would probably need a little bit more room between the reveal and that Super Bowl commercial if there is going to be one like there was for Switch 1. And so really this has me thinking the reveal will happen sometime in the final 3 weeks of January. But there's a couple other dates to look at here. On January 20th is the presidential inauguration for the United States, and United States politics do have big implications for the entire world, and the United States is a big market for Nintendo. So I do think it makes some sense to believe that Nintendo might want to avoid at least the reveal on specifically the 20th. They could still do it in that same week, but I also wouldn't be totally surprised if they avoid this week because they might want to just steer clear of all the news happening that week having to do with the new president. And so while they could still happen in that week, I'm leaning in either the final week of January or this next week, the week of the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And you might say, well, if Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is coming out next week, why should we expect the reveal then? Maybe we shouldn't. However, I will point out, we did have a Direct just a couple days before the release of Emula's Smiling Man in this past August. So we've seen something like this before, and to be honest with you, I personally just don't think the Switch 2 reveal would really impact Donkey Kong sales too much. They've already put out the overview trailer for Donkey Kong. It's already been marketed, unlike Xenoblade, which still needs to be marketed. So I would argue that we could see a Switch 2 reveal in the beginning of next week, a couple days before Donkey Kong comes out. But perhaps the safest bet from everything we're seeing here is to maybe think the final week of January, where there isn't any sort of big presidential inauguration that I know of at least. There isn't a game coming out. There isn't some sort of big presentation. It's enough time before the Super Bowl. Maybe this is the week, the final week of January, which, by the way, would be a decent amount of weeks removed from Christmas, so people getting upset about a Switch 2 reveal trailer would probably be reduced significantly, especially because, well, it's already public info that Nintendo's coming out with a console relatively soon. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.